Welcome to the 700 Club. Crippling spending that could destroy this great country, leaving it in shambles for our children and grandchildren. President Biden's $3.5 trillion budget plan, led by socialist Bernie Sanders, has passed the Senate. So what now? There's more coming. It can get as high as $7 trillion. Here's Gary Lane.
Pat, last night, Democrats pushed through the framework for a huge $3.5 trillion budget.
The yeas are 50, the nays are 49, and the concurrent resolution as amended is agreed to.
That measure passed on a strictly party line vote. Will all Democrats support it? Well, Republicans were against it. All Democrats supported it. One Republican senator was absent. Democrats and the president say the budget led by Democrat Socialist Bernie Sanders will help families fight climate change and create jobs. Democrats also pledging to pay for it with new taxes and offsets. But the blueprint assumes hundreds of billions in deficits over the next 10 years. Republicans say it will waste money, hurt the economy with high taxes, fuel inflation, and put into place far-left mandates that will hurt Americans. The House will take up the budget plan in 2 weeks. Pat?
Gary, is anything can be done to stop this thing? I know Lindsey Graham apparently has COVID, and he wasn't there to vote. But what do you think?
Pat, it doesn't matter if Lindsey Graham is there or not because the Democrats have the votes. Now, the only one that may stand in the way of that is Senator Manchin of West Virginia. He already has raised some concerns about this massive spending. But when push comes to shove, it always seems like the Democrats come through and stick together as a party. I don't think there's much that can be done about this. Of course, it's not a budget that has been approved yet. When the House returns in 2 weeks, it's just the framework that they'll be looking at. And then it will go to committees, and we'll see if it works its way through the committees, but it likely will, probably in the late fall, maybe by Christmas.
Gary, can you give us a few of the salient horror stories that are embedded in this terrible budget?
Well, Pat, one thing they want to do is expand Medicare. That was something that Sanders always wanted. His thumbprints are all over this legislation, proposed legislation. Universal pre-K, child care, community college, elder care. Of course, they've always talked about doing away with student loans. But when it comes to Medicare, they want to lower the age. They want to expand it to include things like eye care, dental care, so forth. And in addition to that, Pat, one big thing on Sanders' list has been paid family medical leave. Now, right now, you can leave, take family leave and go for 12 weeks, I guess, and still come back to the same position that you had on the job, but it's not paid. Imagine paying people for not being productive. Small businesses will not be able to afford that. You combine that with increases in the minimum wage, they'll be shutting their doors.
Well, it looks like Bernie Sanders is a socialist. Actually, he spent his honeymoon in Moscow, so you really call him a communist. But it looks like the left, the so-called squad with AOC and Bernie Sanders, are pretty much running the government right now. Am I right in that?
Well, they're definitely running the Democratic Party. And just think about it. I mean, Bernie Sanders, if it hadn't been for him backing off in the primary season, Joe Biden wouldn't be president. Bernie Sanders would have run against Trump, and Trump probably would have beat him. And that is what the Democrats were concerned about. So I'm sure they made backroom deals saying, Bernie, look, you back off. We will push through much of your agenda. And part of this agenda is very radical. Climate change, Pat, is also part of that. That's a big thing for Bernie Sanders and AOC. But what can you really do about the climate? I talked to one climatologist earlier this week, and he said, look, they're always, it's really a solution looking for a problem. And he wouldn't spend one dime on it because he doesn't think we're in a climate crisis.
Gary, thank you very much.
Sure.
Well, in other news, going down in flames, Governor Andrew Cuomo is resigning, caving to pressure after a bombshell report accused him of sexually harassing 11 women. The governor will step down in 2 weeks. So who will replace him, and how will she make history? CBN White House correspondent Eric Phillips has that coverage.
Well, Cuomo said the state assembly outlined an expensive and time-consuming impeachment process involving weeks of hearings and investigations and months of litigation, costing the state time and money it can't afford to spend. So, despite his first inclination to fight, he ultimately chose to resign and end the distraction.
The best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore, that's what I'll do.
Embattled New York Governor Andrew Cuomo resigning, effective in 2 weeks. The announcement coming a week after a damning state attorney general investigative report accusing him of sexually harassing 11 women. Cuomo called the report unfair and untruthful.
This is about politics.
The governor stepping aside and offering apologies, though not admitting to the allegations. He explained that while trying to be friendly, he inadvertently acted in a way that was too familiar.
In my mind, I've never crossed the line with anyone. This is not to say that there are not 11 women who I truly offended. There are. And for that, I deeply, deeply apologize. There are generational and cultural shifts that I just didn't fully appreciate. And I should have. No excuses.
Cuomo made the public announcement moments after his attorney spoke out to poke holes in the AG's report.
The investigators acted as the prosecutors, the judge, and the jury of Governor Cuomo.
Reaction to Cuomo's announcement was swift, even coming from President Biden himself, who was among the chorus of leaders calling for the governor to resign.
I respect the governor's decision, and I respect the decision he made.
New York Attorney General Letitia James said, "Today closes a sad chapter for all of New York, but it's an important step towards justice." And one of the governor's first accusers, Lindsey Boylan, tweeted, "I am thankful for the Attorney General, the investigators, and all those who have pursued the truth despite intimidation and threats of retaliation. There is absolutely no joy in any of this. It is a tragedy, just a massive, heartbreaking tragedy for so many." Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hoelkel will become the first female governor in New York State history. She released a statement saying she agrees with Governor Cuomo's decision to step down, that it's the right thing to do and in the best interest of New Yorkers. Pat.
Well, let me ask you this. He really, it wasn't a question of how many nursing home people were put into COVID situations where they died, but he ruined the state. They've lost a member of Congress, and people are fleeing New York by the thousands. Can you have any information about the specifics about what's happening to New York?
Well, you know, that whole situation with the nursing homes and the perhaps misinformation that was given about deaths there was sort of the beginning of the end where Governor Cuomo is concerned. Of course, that is outside of what we're talking about today, where these allegations of sexual harassment against these 11 women are concerned. But when you look at his legacy as a whole, that certainly was a blemish on it. And it came after he was considered one of the leading governors in terms of fighting the war on COVID-19. So again, that was sort of the beginning of the end. Now you have this situation where he's been accused of sexually harassing these 11 women. In the face of a possible impeachment, he decides to step down. And the idea is that perhaps he was trying to control the narrative, because if in fact, Pat, he was impeached, he would have to go immediately. There would be no 14-day buffer. So in doing so, resigning, he's able to control the narrative, have 14 days to kind of leave office the way that he does, with his image and his the way that he wants to be remembered somewhat intact. But again, when you talk about things like that whole nursing home debacle, it's an uphill climb.
Eric, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think any sadness would be, but I've pointed out before, you've got the leader of New York. New York is in shambles because of his policies. You've got the leader of California with a recall. So going into the next presidential election, the Democrats really don't have a very deep bench. And you wonder who in the world are they going to put up? And that's why they are attacking Governor DeSantis so hard, because he is the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party. But this is a massive shift. And as I said in previous programs, they know they're going to lose big in the midterm elections. They're going to lose control of the House. They're going to lose control of the Senate. They're going to lose the speakership. I mean, it's going to be a tsunami of people who are voting against them because of crime and because of inflation and because of this flood of immigrants on the border and all the other stuff that's going on. They are going to lose big, and they're trying to jam everything they can through in the socialist agenda before they lose control. So keep in mind, it's coming as sure as the sun rises every day. Well, also in the news, the heat is on to get the COVID vaccine. The U.S. military, along with business giants like Walmart, are mandating vaccinations, as well as the Justice Department, the EEOC, and Veterans Affairs. Well, leery of the shot, many Americans are pushing back. So what could happen next? Jennifer Wishon has that.
The latest statistics show just half of the country is fully vaccinated, and those who haven't taken the shot are facing more repercussions. In a memo to U.S. service members, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announcing all troops will be required to get the COVID vaccine, a move supported by President Joe Biden.
CNN has fired 3 employees who came to work without getting a COVID vaccine.
CNN joins some of the nation's largest employers like Walmart, Google, and Facebook, all requiring workers to get vaccinated. Both the Justice Department and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission have decided the mandates are acceptable.
Certainly, I celebrate when I see businesses deciding that they're going to mandate that for their employees.
But when Veterans Affairs mandated healthcare workers get vaccinated or face possible termination, doctors, nurses, and other professionals lit up the phones at Liberty Counsel.
Many of them have been distraught, frantic. Some have called us in tears to find out how they could ultimately respond. They love their job, but they didn't want to get the shots.
Liberty Counsel pressured the government to reveal employees can legally opt out for religious reasons, a fact that wasn't publicized. Many Americans simply aren't comfortable getting a COVID vaccine. That's because of questions regarding both long-term effects and the reporting of injuries from vaccines. Add that to confusion from the CDC about breakthrough infections and masks that's led to mistrust, and the fact that the shots are still not fully authorized by the FDA. Like it or not, getting a vaccine has also become politicized, which is something the Biden administration has worked to tamp down.
Why is it that a mandate about vaccine or about wearing a mask suddenly becomes a statement of your political party? We never should have let that happen. And come on, America, we can separate these, can't we? We're incredibly polarized about politics. We don't really need to be polarized about a virus that's killing people.
Staver argues it comes down to one thing: freedom.
It is reprehensible, it's un-American, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal to force individuals, particularly our healthcare working heroes, against their will. And that is just despicable.
And today, Liberty Counsel is organizing Walkout Wednesday, encouraging all Americans, vaccinated or not, to walk out of their workplaces or schools at noon to stand for freedom. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
I'm for freedom, folks, but I really do believe this COVID is deadly. It is just a horrible thing. And I don't think we ought to make people do stuff that they are against doing, but at the same time, for their own good. You don't want to get COVID. Well, CBN medical reporter Laurie Johnson is with us now. Laurie, who can opt out of these mandates? What's the process?
Well, Pat, when we look at vaccine mandates among schools, for example, each state has different criteria. So we can definitely expect people can opt out of COVID-19 vaccine mandates for medical reasons. That means you have a legitimate medical reason why you cannot have this vaccine. For example, you're allergic to some of the ingredients in the vaccine. Another way sometimes people are allowed to opt out of vaccine mandates is for religious reasons. This means that you are a member of a religion that forbids you to have any other kind of medical care except faith healing. And then the third criteria is philosophical reasons. Some people are philosophically opposed to vaccines, and in some places they're able to opt out of vaccine mandates for that reason.
The FDA is fast-tracking approval of the Pfizer vaccine. I thought it was already approved. Well, what are they doing?
Right. So many people are confused by this. It has received emergency use authorization, so it is approved, but it hasn't gotten that final authorization. And studies show that some people who are vaccine hesitant are holding out until the FDA issues that final approval. And now we know that that final approval is expected for just the Pfizer vaccine, probably by next month, but an internal FDA memos obtained by the Associated Press show that it's probably going to be before Labor Day. And so once that final approval comes through, it's expected that many more people will indeed get the vaccine, and some organizations, government offices, businesses, schools, and whatnot are more likely to adopt vaccine mandates at that time, Pat.
Laurie, we've got all this confusion about, do you wear a mask, do you not wear a mask, and little kids wearing masks. Do you go outside and socially distance out in the out of doors, you got to wear a mask? You go home, you have to wear a mask. Talk about all that stuff. Is it necessary?
I know. It's just overwhelming. And yes, it's necessary because this vaccine, this virus has changed. It isn't what it was at the beginning of June when it was practically non-existent. So yes, the vaccine, the masks and where to wear them, and the kids, it's just a big mess. I know here in Virginia Beach, for example, it's very typical of different school districts across the country. The school board meeting went till past midnight last night, and the school board was very divided, but they ended up saying yes, masks are required for the kids. It's very upsetting to some people. Some people really want it. Right next door in Chesapeake, masks are not required. So it's often done on a very local basis, at an individualized basis within businesses, within school districts regarding masks. But as we talked about before, Pat, masks are not really what medical doctors say are the solution to this pandemic. It's vaccines.
You know, one thing I want to point out, and we got to get on with it, but, you know, this whole social distance, this 6-foot thing, as I understand it, was a dead Italian that came up with that concept, and it really has no scientific basis. Am I correct in that?
It is. And so a lot of these mitigation efforts that were in place before we had vaccines are being challenged and questioned. Are they really that effective? And many people, many medical professionals are saying, no, not really. But once again, things that medical doctors almost universally agree is that the best approach is vaccines.
Okay. Well, I'm a vaccine fan. This thing, ladies and gentlemen, is horrible. It is a horrible thing. It leads to neurological problems. It leads to problems with your heart, and you don't want to get it. So if this little vaccine, well, there are side effects of the vaccine, but they pale in insignificance in relation to the damage that COVID thing can do, especially this new virus that is coming along.